Good evening, Sleepy Hollow.
Good evening.
Call the meeting to order. Welcome, everybody, to December 19th, 2019 Planning Board, the last Planning Board meeting of the decade. We have a quorum this evening, despite missing a couple members, so we'll proceed. The agenda we have for tonight is a busy one. First up is Open Door Family Medical Center at 300 North Broadway is a public hearing. Next up is our Sleepy Hollow Local Development Corporation coming to talk about East Parcel filling operations. And then Mr. Villani is back to discuss 30 Andrews Lane and the proposed townhouse development. The Reformed Church of the Tarrytowns has requested an adjournment until January, so we'll take that off until then. And then we have a new applicant, Form 01 LLC, for a proposed two-family residence at 34 Hudson Street. And then last but not least is a discussion of the floating zone. Okay. With that, I will motion to open the public hearing for Open Door Family Medical Center. Can I get a second?
So moved. Second.
All in favor? Thank you. All right, Open Door.
Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the board. I'm Gary Gianfrancesco from Arconics Architecture PC. We are the architects and planners representing Open Door with regard to this site plan application before you this evening. The proposal is to install a 22 kV emergency standby generator fueled by 3 120-gallon propane tanks. The purpose of the generator is to preserve refrigerated vaccines and medications should the power go down in the building. The generator will also support minimal heat to maintain the building from pipes freezing and such, but the primary reason is to preserve expensive vaccines and medications which are refrigerated within the facility. The generator is proposed to be located in an existing screened-in, fenced-in trash enclosure, actually, which is oversized. The view into the area where the generator will be located, the generator would be located as such. The propane tanks would be located here. This would be the connection from the generator into the building. This area, the generator is tucked in near the building on one side. It's a 22-foot high wall, and to the left of it on this side is a 6-foot high retaining wall. And the area actually will act as almost like an amphitheater, and any of the sounds will emanate this way down to 310 North Broadway, also owned by Open Door. And as the grade drops down, the expectation is that the sounds will dissipate, but will be contained within Open Door property almost exclusively. The generator will be regularly exercised once a week on Wednesdays from 12 noon until 12:20. So it'll be a weekly exercise. The motor will run at low speed for exercise purposes, much less of a noise generator than if there is a load on the generator itself. Standby generators, it's factual that a standby generator for 95% of its life does not run. And this is not a luxury item here. This is really about preserving vaccines and medication. That in and of itself is pretty much my presentation. I'm prepared to answer any questions you may have regarding this application.
That's a question. Is that a door I can see on the picture at the bottom there, the smaller picture there, the color picture? It looks like a door at the
Here?
corner, yeah.
No, that's a fence. That's his gate.
Okay.
That's that fence.
How do you
This
gonna
is
gain-
all outside space.
How are you gonna gain access to that location where the generator is for ongoing maintenance, not for?
Well, that's actually why we situated it the way we did. You can walk all the way around to service the generator.
Okay. Where's the relation to this?
I'm sorry?
Oh, so where's Route 9? Okay. Where's Route 9?
Route 9, here.
So this thing is not proximate to any roads?
No.
How many hours will 360 gallons of propane serve?
My understanding, although it depends on actual running
load,
time,
yeah.
it's good for about 3 to 4 days. It was, in a perfect world, we would have preferred not to use propane, but given the circumstances with Con Ed and getting, our gas service is all the way on the other side of the building, and it would have needed to been upgraded, so. Just as the truck backs up and grabs the trash, our canisters could get replaced or refilled.
Okay. Okay. Are there any,
I had one question, not anything major, but is it a historical, I thought in the EAF it said that either this property or an adjacent property was qualified for the historical register. Is that correct?
No.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Does this require any approval by the fire department or
The building department would review it?
no? No. Okay.
okay, are there any comments from the public? No? Okay. I don't see any reason to hold the public hearing open, so.
No, if you're comfortable enough with the information that's been presented, you can make a motion if you'd like.
Yep, so I move to close the public hearing. Second? All in
Second.
favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay,
Madam Chair, you do have a resolution
Resolution.
before you for site plan amendment.
okay,
If you'd like, I can just read the conditions
That'd be
rather than
great.
the... So the resolution has two conditions on it. One, the applicant will pay the Village of Sleepy Hollow all application and review fees as required by the village code prior to a building permit being issued. And two, prior to the issuance of a certificate of compliance, an as-built survey shall be provided to the village building department, and any material change to the plan from that approved by the planning board will require the applicant to present the revised plan to the planning board for a plan amendment. That's your resolution before you.
okay, thanks, David. Is that it?
That's it.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Do you want to take a vote on that tonight, or
Sure, let's vote.
is there a motion?
Is there a motion to pass the resolution?
I move.
We get a second?
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye,
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
thank you. Okay, LDC? Anyone from the LDC want to present the next East Parcel application?
Okay, so, the Local Development Corporation, as you know, has been actively engaged in site plan improvements for the East Parcel. They're currently engaged in, and I think they're almost finished with the improvements related to the installation of new sewer line and water line. And they're getting ready for kind of the next phase of improvements, which is the, essentially the placement of fill for the new DPW, and there's certain ground improvement programs, the wick drain program, if you recall, which helps the land settle as part of this development process. So the LDC has been working with fill providers, and right now they're getting clean fill delivered to the East Parcel on a regular basis, and their limitation based on prior approvals, prior site plan and fill approvals, has been 50 truck trips per day. The fact that they have clean fill available and is being delivered to the site at no cost is a substantial economic benefit to the village and to the LDC. And what they're here for tonight is they would like to increase the truck trips on a daily basis from 50 to 75, using the same routes, using the same, there are certain blackout periods that need to be observed, and that's related to school hours. And so what they're proposing, and there was a submission that they made a letter submission to the planning board to have that increase. So it's not a site plan amendment as much as it is a condition of the site plan to allow for the additional truck trips, so that they actually could bring in more fill and get the filling process concluded in a much more expeditious process. So, Mayor, unless you have some.
Thank you. Mr. Smith is correct, and Mr. Smith is usually correct in his comments before this board. One of the other things that I want to highlight is that the amount of time that we could shave off of the deliveries of fill to the site, if we were allowed to add additional trucks to our daily allowance, if you will, we could finish bringing all the fill into the site in early June of next year, meaning that the trucks would not be there during the summertime when there are more people outside, there's more kids on the street and so on. I think that's a big benefit to us. I also want to say that you can't really discount the opportunity we have here right now. We're paying somewhere between $4.50 and $5 a yard for the fill that comes in now. That's with not paying for the fill itself and not paying for the delivery of the fill. That is our cost for our folks to make sure that all the paperwork is correct, that the DEC sign-offs are correct for each and every truck that comes in, for our environmental engineer, for a number of things to make sure that the stuff that's coming in is clean fill. Obviously, if we had more, we're paying for those folks on a daily rate. So if we had more fill coming in, our costs would actually go down. That's not the main emphasis here. It is that we have an opportunity to get a lot more fill that would be appropriate for our site and get it now. So we would avoid two things. One is having to pay for it in the future if we can't grab all of this as it's available now, and finishing early. One of the things that you should know about this is the way the fill actually comes in is 3 times a day, almost in a convoy. The very first group of trucks does come in a convoy because they know they can't come in before 7 o'clock. So they fill up, they line up together, they come in. The average time that a truck is on the site is 1.5 minutes. That's from the time they go through the gate, dump their load of fill and get back out again. So it's a pretty quick process. And then they're back to on the regular roads and picking up another load. We've never had more than 3 trips a day. We've never hit 50 trucks. We've never gone up to our limit. I think the most we've ever done is 46. And we don't do it 5 days a week. It's pretty much 3 to 4 days a week average because of weather and other issues. So we don't expect that part of it to change. And what this would really allow us to do is go from an average of about 40 trucks a day, which is when they do run, that's what we see, to go probably to 60 or maybe more, maybe 65. And that would give us enough time to shave off a few months from our delivery schedule.
You wouldn't expand your hours, though?
No, we don't. We have a blackout period at the end of the day, also around the school hours, and we so far have never had a delivery after that.
Right.
So that part of it I don't expect to change. And that really is a function of the truckers and their schedules. So we would still have a first in the morning and then two more in the late morning and early afternoon.
You're going to keep in place the process you've used to ensure you have high-quality soil coming through?
That is absolutely the case. The soil is tested and signed off on by the DEC before it leaves for us, before it leaves the site where it's being scooped up. Every truck comes in with its own paperwork. We check every truck when it comes into the site to make sure that the paperwork is what they started off with. Nothing got put in between. So each one of them, we have the documentation that says that it's acceptable. And that's signed off by the state, not by the people we're getting it from.
And the expansion, Ken, you're talking about, is the soil available today? Do you feel confident there's enough soil to meet our needs through June?
We do, but I always want to be cautious and say something could happen. The project where we're getting it from, something could go wrong there and they could stop for whatever reason. So we want to take advantage of this opportunity while we have the chance.
So the LDC has retained a consultant, Josh Ford, who helps coordinate the import of the fill. And while there is this one project that's generating a significant amount of fill, there are a list of other projects that could also provide fill. So if in the event that one project dries up, Josh has made sure that there is another project in waiting so that there is no slowdown or no gap in the importation of fill.
Good.
Do you have an estimate on what the cost savings is as a result of getting freely delivered free fill?
I don't have one, but I can give you some numbers. We were looking at $30 a yard for purchasing and delivery of fill. There were people that, in certain markets, it depends if that's the right way to say it, there's certain times when clean fill is harder to come by, and so people charge you for it. And then we would have to pay to have it delivered as well. And we saw numbers at around $30 a yard and up. We need 120,000 more yards of fill, so...
3.5 million? That's a lot of money.
Yeah. So 120 times 30 plus.
Yeah.
So 360? 360,000 more?
Plus, right. All right, well, it seems like a good opportunity. Any concerns?
I also want to add that I meet periodically with a neighborhood group, an informal group of residents who live on Continental Street and Pleasant Street. And I met with them last night and brought them up to speed and talked extensively about this change as well. And there were no objections from that neighborhood group, for a group of neighbors, I should say.
Good. How long have you been running at 40 trucks a day, Ken? How long have we, or I should say we?
We've just started back up again because we weren't accepting fill while the new water line and new sewer line were being installed. We needed to finish that work before we could start accepting more fill. So it's been just maybe a month now? Yeah.
Is somebody in the village going to be keeping an eye on the roads? My understanding around Ken is they come from the east off 117 south on 9 into the village. Is that right? Is that the route?
Lately, they've been coming through Terrytown. They've been lining up early in the morning at in a parking lot at the south end of Terrytown Because I think the first trucks arrive before, and they know they can't come in before 7, so they wait, and then just before 7, they drive through and come in. We have already planned to redo Continental Street in a couple of different ways. One is to widen the street in a couple of places so that we can make it a two-way street. We're not here to ask for that yet, but that's certainly part of the plan. And we expect that we will be completely redoing Continental once we've got the majority of the construction complete on there. So we've done things like run cameras through the sewer line and things like to make sure, to see what the conditions were before.
Yeah.
And but we just think since we're going to be redoing the street anyway, it would be a good time to open it up and reline or replace some of those, some of that infrastructure.
No
Okay,
questions?
well, it seems like a good opportunity, so,
Yeah.
do we vote?
So you,
Should we see if there's?
Madam Chair, you do have a resolution before you. Essentially, this is it's not a site plan amendment where you're changing the site plan per se,
Right.
it's just a condition,
Right,
a prior condition of the site plan. So that's really what the resolution spells out before you. It does go through some of the history of the LDC, what they've been doing with the east parcel. It recognizes that there have been prior permits issued for filling operations and a prior special permit, riverfront development concept plan, and then a site plan approval. So the resolution that you have before you would allow for the number of truck trips to increase to a maximum of 75. And then all the other conditions that were in the planning board's February 22nd, 2018 site plan approval would still remain in full force and effect. And that goes to some of the issues that you raised, Matt, with respect to road conditions, looking at the conditions of the sewer and the infrastructure and those improvements.
okay. Can I get a motion?
I'll move.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Get 75 trucks.
If I may, Madam Chair, just on a kind of a pretty happy note for the village, we were awarded, we found out today that a $2 million grant we applied for was awarded to the village for work on the east parcel to help us move our current DPW out of the flood-prone area that it's in now. And so that's pretty exciting stuff for
That's
us.
great.
That's great.
So,
Excellent.
thank you.
Good trip to Albany.
It was worth the trip, yes.
Madam Chair, if I could say one thing, the EAF, it said that the west parcel was subject to environmental cleanup and remediation. I think isn't this parcel, so it should be east and west, just for the record.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Can we move on?
Oh, yes, ma'am.
Mr. Valani, 30 Andrews Lane.
Good evening. John Valani, resident of Valani Design Consultants, representing owners of 30 Andrews Lane, proposed 9-unit townhouse development. Our most recent submittal addresses some of the comments from the board as far as the site plan is concerned, with moving the two structures towards Andrews Lane, as well as staggering the units to create some distinction between the buildings. So the actual movement of these buildings and the staggering allows for a very vast open space at the rear of the property, exactly 4,381 square feet of communal space, which will be contributed to all the units. We've also added balconies to the back of the buildings and made some minor alterations to the porches and the walkways. We, at this point, are trying to solidify the site plan so that we can address other comments that were made during the planning board meetings of location of significant equipment, opportunities for alternate forms of energy, which we've discussed with the owner, and also elaborate the elevations and floor plans of the buildings. So as long as the site plan is solidified, I can go ahead and put some concrete drawings together on that.
Yeah, we really appreciate how responsive you've been to our comments and incorporating all the changes, so great progress.
Thank you.
Any further comments? Do you want to give us an update as far as the energy plans after
Well, no,
discussions with the owner?
Actually, what I would like to do is take this time, which I'm thinking we're going to need the opportunity to maybe not even appear next month, to put together a very a complete set of drawings to address all these things.
Mm-hmm.
So I was going to ask for that, but as long as this site plan is solidified, I can address these comments and develop the drawings to a certain extent.
Okay.
Can you also identify if any variances are going to be?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah,
submitted?
thank you, Sean. I'm sorry. And in conjunction with Sean and David, we had a meeting regarding the size of the units, and I've adjusted the size of units to. We originally were going to have to get some setback variances, but we've adjusted the buildings to eliminate those. But I will still need a very minor coverage variance of 1.55%. I obviously, between now and the next meeting, I will verify those numbers, and I'm hoping to simultaneously go for a zoning variance, as well as, David, you mentioned about going to the town board as well? Yeah, Madam Chair, the plan calls for an emergency access out to the village, the existing village parking lot, so that would be an item that the applicant would need to go before the village board to get permission from.
Yeah, we'd like to refer you both to the zoning board for the variance as well as to the board of trustees for the ingress and egress for emergency access to the municipal lot.
That would be great.
Yeah.
Just a quick question, as far as sequencing is concerned. I spoke with Pamela. I missed January's zoning board meeting, but would like to go for February. I can do planning in February. It's zoning and planning at the same time, correct? Can I do all three at the same time? Is that even, yeah? Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Go
Just
for
want to
it.
make sure. All right. Thank you. Good?
All right.
We're good?
Have a good holiday.
One quick question.
Yep.
What are on the site plan, there's some blank rectangles back in the back.
Oh, that's some proposed locations
No.
for condensers back here? Oh, these are benches, just
Oh,
signifying
benches.
some seating area.
Okay.
The landscape plan will also get developed.
Good.
Next, yeah. Just got we solidified the buildings. I'm ecstatic.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, 34 Hudson Street.
I don't know where we should put our material palette.
Right here, wherever you'd like.
Madam Chair, members of the board. So my name is Brian Hopkins. This is my business partner, Philip Hobb. We're developers and architects that actually just started working in the area about at the beginning of the year. I don't know if you're familiar with the new development on 58 Central Avenue in Tarrytown. That's one of our projects. We also have a project that just kicked off on 119 DePaster Street, which was just approved by Sean. And this is going to be our third development and our first ground up. So we are developers, but first and foremost, we are architects, and we really think that we are contributing to the built environment every time we build a project. And really for us, it's less about the money, and it's really much more about building quality architecture. So I don't know if you guys read the long project narrative that I wrote. Sorry if you did. But I'd like to read just one excerpt from it. So, I think one of the kind of great things about being a developer is actually interacting with the people that you are developing for. and getting to know the neighborhood and the people that live there. Hudson Street has kind of a long history, starting in the mid-1800s. And I got to know one of the residents quite closely because of Robert. And her name's Faith Husillo, and her ancestors date back to the mid-1800s. And she wrote this really great quote when I was just talking to her about kind of the planning board, and she said she wanted to come. So I just want to read it to you guys, just so you get an idea of kind of the long history of Hudson Street. So according to Faith, Hudson Street was a real working man's street, an amalgam of immigrants working hard for a chance at the brass ring. My great-grandmother came from County Cavan in Ireland in the mid-1860s, was a maid at the Goulds at Lyndhurst, and used 50 Hudson Street as a rooming house to welcome new arrivals from Ireland. So amazing, amazing history. So, I mean, we all know what happened with the GM factory and everything like that. So Hudson Street kind of is a very unique kind of street. The reason for that is because of its zoning, because of its constrained characteristics, a very steeply sloping site, very constrained lots, positioned kind of in a pretty beautiful area. It's on a bluff overlooking the Hudson, so that's why we're kind of interested in developing the street. It's also 0.4 miles to the Sleepy Hollow downtown, and it's also 0.4 miles to the Tarrytown train. So it's actually perfect for transit-oriented developers, and really the people that we're looking to develop for are moderate-income individuals. So we're not going to be as high-priced as the Edge on Hudson development, where units start at around 800,000. We're going to be looking more in the high fives, low sixes. So really, we think that it's going to be for young urban professionals looking to come into the area and really revitalize it. So let's take a look at the project itself and what our proposal is. So, okay, this is just a site plan. Okay, so I know that this is in the zoning board, and I don't know how deep into zoning I should go. Can I talk a little bit about zoning, or? Of course. So it's an undersized lot. Minimum lot sizes in Sleepy Hollow are 4,000 square feet. Our lot is closer to 2,500. So pretty much everything about our site is going to be atypical, and it's going to be requiring variances. Currently, the existing house that sits on the site is non-conforming in its front yard setback, in its north side yard setback, and also in its use. It's used as a 3-family. We want to convert it back to a 2. So we're actually going to be reducing the density, and we are going to be maintaining the existing footprint, and that's what we're going to be seeking a variance for. We're going to be proposing an addition to the back so that we can get a larger floor plate. Currently, the floor plate is 600 gross, and then once you remove all the walls and everything like that, it's going to be closer to 590. So it's really not a floor plate that you can really develop. If we were to develop it, we'd lose a lot of money. So we are looking to extend it in the back, and we're looking to max out the 35 feet height. Now, if you look at our neighbors, you can see that they've done similar things. Pretty much every single neighbor that we have is non-conforming in bulk, in setbacks, not so much in height, but we do have some neighbors, 28 Hudson and 30, that are maxing out at 35 feet. One of the things that I think is great about our proposal is, if you notice, so that's 28 and 30, what they've done is actually create porticos and porches on the first, second, and third floor with roofs. Now, that actually creates a much kind of bulkier facade. What we're proposing is we're still going to have 3 porches, but we're actually going to leave the top open with dormers, and it's going to give it a much more open feel. And it's not going to look much bigger than the existing building that's there. So, yeah, we can go deeper into zoning during that meeting. But as you can see from some of the pictures here, you can see that they've maxed out in their height. Our neighbor to the right of us at 36 Hudson has also pushed right to the street edge. We're set back. This neighbor also has set back very far. all the way to his rear yard setback. So as far as lot coverage, he's going to be way over where we will even be once we build out the footprint that we're proposing. Yeah. So we just got a survey with topography on it, so we weren't able to incorporate the topography that is there, but we will incorporate it into the existing site plan. I guess some of the important components are going to be, we do have a fire hydrant that initially I thought was much further down, but we actually do have one right at 36 Hudson, right in front of 36 Hudson. We do have, and this is something that we uncovered during more site investigation, we had to perform an eviction. We let the tenants stay for 3 months. We were very generous with them. They're actually still there, but we weren't able to do the kind of site analysis that we typically do when we analyze a site. We have uncovered existing water infrastructure that we can use at least for the front roof pitch. For the back, we're going to be proposing retention tanks. So like I said before, we're going to be maintaining the existing foundation, which currently is non-conforming in its front and its north setback. We had our structural engineer, who's actually here, Joe Provenza, and he said we could land a skyscraper on the foundation. So that's very encouraging. So we're going to use as much of the foundation as we can. And we're going to be pushing to the back. So we'll be demoing the 2.5-story structure that's currently there. And these are going to be the proposed plans for the new building. Now, let me walk you through what these. Yeah, we'll look at a section because there was a little bit of confusion about how the two units actually work together. So we can look at this section after I kind of walk through the plan. Basically, enter on a front porch into an entry hall, and you enter into the first unit down here. Now, each of the units is going to be a 2-bedroom unit with a master bedroom and also a smaller bedroom. They're not very big units. They're about 1,200 square feet, if I'm being generous, and that's gross. So you come in, each main floor is for living with a bedroom. So all the living functions are going to happen on the main floors, which are the full floors. And so each of those has a living dining room with a kitchen, a hall bath, and then a second bedroom. There is a central stair that takes you up to the second bedroom, which is the master. When we come up, this is the master bedroom, and the reason that we place the master bedroom for the first unit on the second floor is so that you can get those nice Hudson views. So we also have the master bedroom for the second unit also on the second floor. So you can imagine 2 interlocking Ls like this. So on the first floor, if you walk up this stair, you come up to the entrance for the second unit. And when you come off of this door, you have the master bedroom, and then you walk up into the main space, which we call the sky unit. And the sky unit is basically the same layout as the first floor, except it doesn't have that entry hall. So it's a little bit of a bigger unit, and it also has a front porch. The floor plate's a little smaller in the east and the west facades, just because we have those the roof pitch and the 3 dormers. So where's the section?
Elevations, let me go back to that.
Yeah, we'll go back. So when we're looking at a section, you can see that this is the first floor unit here, right, with the stair. And then the second unit interlocks down here. So that's 1L, and then this is the second L. Basically, the second unit has the nicest view, but the first unit has access to the backyard and the garden, which is, so both of them have amenities in their own way. So when we're looking at the facade, really what we're going for is a Hudson Valley bracketed style, which I did some research on. Read Cottage Residences by A.J. Davis, who wrote the book back in the mid-1800s. And really, it's kind of an amalgam of different styles. But basically, it was derived from more of a farmhouse style with an open porch concept, and the brackets were a very American thing. And really, if you drive up and down the Hudson, it's kind of one of the beautiful things about our regional architecture. So we're really looking to reinforce it. You know, the elevations aren't developed, but you know, once we get approval, we're really going to build out these the bracketed style and really make it, yes, the details and make them really beautiful. So when we look at the facade, a little bit about the materials. We're going to be using hardy board for the facade. We're going to be using Trex deck for all the porches. We will probably go with vinyl siding just on the sides that really aren't visible. So really, we're going to be putting the money in where you can see it. We're going to be using composite slate, which looks really nice. You have a sample of it there on the front and the back facades. But then we're going to be using asphalt shingling on the parts of the roof that you can't really see. You know, Anderson windows and doors. You know, I think it's going to be a really beautiful addition to the neighborhood. So as far as constructibility, we have the existing foundation that we are going to be building on top of. Now, one of the things that we examined was stick building, but stick building is going to be tremendously expensive. It's also going to be really challenging because of the conditions of the site. So we've been talking to a lot of modular companies, which are going to be building the shell for us. And if you can imagine, they're pretty much going to divide the building into two, and we're going to be landing 6 pieces on the existing facade, on the existing foundation. So we're going to have to extend the foundation, then we're going to come in with the pieces of the modular, and we're going to put in, you know, 2 modular pieces, 2 more modular pieces, and then 2 more modular pieces on top. And then all of the modular pieces, they get fastened from the inside. So pretty much, we don't really have to worry about the side facades, which are going to be abutting our neighbors. And really, afterwards, we're going to come in and we're going to do all of the finishing ourselves. So we'll finish the front and the rear facades, and then we'll do the interior finishing as well.
What are the cost implications to do a modular versus stick built?
That's a really good question. So it's much faster to do a modular.
Mm-hmm.
It takes about 2 months to build the modular in the factory,
Mm-hmm.
and then it comes in and it's pretty much on site. So once it lands, we'd probably have about 2 months of work that we need to do on our end to finish it. That's why we're projecting about 6 months total time for construction. So it's going to be a really fast pace of construction, but we're really confident that we can do it.
Are you going to be able to get modular units in those tight streets?
So yes, we definitely can. Westchester Modular, they actually drove the site. They inspected it, and they're definitely going to be able to land the modular units there. I didn't answer your question about cost.
Right.
So we can deliver a modular, at least the shell of it, probably at a cost that's maybe 20% less than a stick built, and it's faster.
Right.
So there is not going to be on-site parking. Currently, there is no parking, so we're going to be seeking a variance for the parking on site.
Mm-hmm.
But it's pretty much impossible to park anywhere on the site. It's a 25-foot wide lot.
Right.
There's not really any place to push the house back. There's no way to get the cars underneath. It would be just an incredible hardship on us if we were to put parking in there.
Question for Sean, actually.
Of course.
Is there any concern about the weight of the modules coming over the bridges? I mean, either the Beekman Bridge or the H Bridge?
They'll be coming down the Beekman Avenue Bridge, which is brand new now.
Should be fine.
And it
Okay.
was rebuilt for the Edge on Hudson development, so
Okay.
it could definitely handle the
not a
weight of a
problem.
modular, yes.
Yeah, if those trucks with all the dirt are gonna be going over it, this is gonna be,
As well as concrete trucks and everything else that's needed for the construction.
Okay.
You started out by saying you're developers. Are you building for your own account? Are you building on spec for sale of the property to an investor? Or?
so,
What's your plan?
so in order to actually make a profit on this project, we're gonna have to hold it for 5 years. So we actually we're gonna be renting one of the units, and then we have another investor who's gonna be living in the unit downstairs.
Okay.
Yeah, but when we build, we'll either build to hold or we'll build to sell to another party.
Okay.
And then a question about the outdoor space. So the outdoor space generally is the backyard, the deck. And you were mentioning that's effectively accessible for the lower unit only? Or will the upper unit have any access to it?
So, so effectively, the backyard, the way that, at least that we're envisioning it, is that the first unit would have access to the backyard. The second unit wouldn't, and that's one of the amenities that we can provide to the lower tenant.
Okay.
The heating and cooling strategy of the heat pumps.
Oh, yeah, take it away.
So for
Here.
heating and cooling, we're going to use.
Can you walk to the microphone, please? Thank you.
Hi, I'm Philip. For heating and cooling, we'll be using heat pumps. So basically, we're trying to we'll use concealed mini splits in the basement, and also in the there's a little bit of attic space, and basically we'll duct those out, and each unit should have about 3 zones, and we'll work with the modular company to provide chasers for us to be able to locate all the condensate lines, and it's a very efficient system. We've installed it in one of our other houses, and the bills and energy consumption, there's no oil tanks, there's no propane, there's no it's a great system. And basically we'd have 2 condenser units located in the rear of the property, and each would serve one of the units.
Well, I'm so happy to hear that. How deep do you have to dig for your solution?
Sorry, it's not a heat pump. It's not geothermal. It's basically like an air conditioner unit.
Right, it's an air,
but
air
it
system.
compresses the air and it creates heat, and they're rated up to 13 degrees Fahrenheit, and at which point then the performance drops off. But we'll spec it to a level that
And this will sit on the outside of the house?
2 condenser units will be outside at the back.
Okay.
Okay, so it's an air
And the
solution.
noise level of those condenser units? Okay, barely noticeable.
Very audible. I mean,
Yeah, it's like a loud fan.
they're very quiet, and we would use Mitsubishi high efficiency units that are top of the line.
I've seen those, yeah.
And, yeah, also there was a question, there were some comments about how we would meter. Currently there are 3 meters on the site. We're going to maintain the 3 meters, and one of them is going to serve the common space, and then the other 2 are going to serve each of the units. Yeah, common space in the basement.
And that will be just for storage or
It's just going to be utility and storage.
utility and storage?
Yeah, the basement right now, it's very constrained as far as height goes, so we can't really use it for anything. So all the livable space is going to be the first 3 floors.
And you can't dig deeper to extend the basement height?
So we could, but it's very expensive.
Right.
Once we start to do that, we're talking about a foundation that costs about $100,000. So we just blow everything. So we're trying not to do that. As far as the structural system for the extension, the basement extension, we're looking to do piles with a grade beam, which is going to reduce the footprint of the actual foundation, and it's going to be kind of a much lighter foundation, and it'll be cheaper to build.
And so how many properties have you developed thus far?
So just the one at 58, and we're starting our second one, and this will be our third.
Okay.
Are either of those other two modular construction or no?
This is our first modular.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, well, welcome to Sleepy Hollow.
Thank you very much. We look forward to doing a lot of work here.
Any questions?
Yeah, you had mentioned that it sounds like you'd located some stormwater that's already on the site, or stormwater mitigation, or
Mhm.
something. Can you point to where that is on the site?
So
or-
Philip can speak to that because
So
he
there's
took the photos.
actually a line running directly out
Yeah.
in this location, and it runs out to the street. So that actually, I think, looks fairly not ancient. It's a PVC, except none of the water currently in the old house is actually hooked up to it. And then there's one around the back here, but it's a terracotta sort of drain. So we'd have to, during demolition, we'd have to see if that's even. But there would be also a possibility to maybe. Well, I just this one I'm a little concerned about, but this one looks like it.
Okay, but that's a direct connection to the street, or does it discharge the daylight?
No, I mean, it just connects out and under the footpath, and it's at a pretty low level. So I guess it would connect to the storm sewers.
I don't think there's a storm sewer in that street,
Okay.
so you may need to look into that.
Okay.
I want to snip any flags, but it could be an illicit connection if it's going into the street. So we need to look into that. As you work through some of the stormwater stuff, don't hesitate to reach out to me, and
Mhm.
if you want to bounce any ideas off me, I'm always available.
Okay.
Yeah, we definitely have to fully design the system. We still have to do perk tests and kind of see what our drainage situation is.
Great.
That's kind of the next step.
Are you ready to go to the zoning board?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. If they'll have us.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Terrific.
Absolutely,
Well,
yeah.
we'd like to refer you to the zoning board,
Thank you.
and when do you think you'll be ready for a public hearing?
Next month.
Okay. So what's the date of that?
16th, maybe?
Okay. So we'll set a public hearing for January 16th, 2020. Okay. Any other discussions?
One small thing,
Of course.
on one of your environmental forms, you are listed as the lead agency,
Yes.
but it should be the Sleepy Hollow Planning Board.
So I actually asked the building department, and they said that I would be the lead agency. So I was misinformed. I asked multiple times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We blame everything on the building department.
No, I mean, I asked the question multiple times.
Give it up.
Yeah. So I can
Agency, just that.
I can change that
Yeah.
in the next submission. Yeah, I actually didn't know who I should put for the lead agency, so I asked the question.
Okay, terrific. Have good holidays. We'll see you in January.
Thank you very much. Happy holidays, everybody.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, we're in the home stretch. Floating zone. Oh, yeah, take your materials. Are
So-
you presenting on, who's presenting the zoning code?
So I'll start.
Okay,
The Sleepy Hollow Local Development Corporation has been actively involved in repositioning one of its properties, 193 Beekman Avenue, the former UAW property. And as part of that, and in conjunction with certain recommendations in the village's recently adopted comprehensive plan, they have, or they commissioned the drafting of specific zoning language for the creation of this, they're calling the strategic property redevelopment floating zone. And essentially the way the floating zone works, the floating zone has specific criteria that would allow this zone to land on specific properties. In the proposal, it includes properties that are owned by a municipal or government-related entity. They must be located within 1/2 mile of a Metro North train station or within 1,000 linear feet from a dedicated bus stop. And they must be located within the inner village. And there's a reference here to Figure 7 of the Village of Sleepy Hollow Comprehensive Plan. So it's essentially
If you don't mind me interjecting, to meet
Go
any
ahead.
of those three criteria, how many buildings are we talking about?
I believe there are it's like 7 or 8 properties.
Yeah, it seems like there'd be a limited
Yeah, it's Village
universe.
Hall, the Ambulance Corps. There are several firehouses. The UAW property, as I mentioned, DPW, the senior center. So right now it's limited in the scope.
So this envisions more expansion of public or municipal-owned built properties to a larger size. What about private commercial properties?
It does not contemplate at this point incorporating or allowing for the floating zone to land
So
on.
you might not see a 5- to 7-story apartment property up against the train tracks. Okay.
Yeah. So, but right now, it does not contemplate an application for landing the property on or using private property.
Okay.
So it's really intended to allow the village, as the village considers redevelopment of certain properties or assets, to getting them incentivized and then allowing the development community to redevelop certain properties and get the tax rolls back on, the properties back on the tax rolls into the stream of commerce. So that's kind of the general overview of the floating zone concept. Is you understand that each area, each property within the village has a specific zoning designation. You have certain zones, the R5, the C1, C2. So this is one that's specifically targeted for properties within the inner village community. So,
And can you explain the rationale for that versus a more inclusive floating zone concept that would include private development?
Let me take a stab.
go ahead.
We're trying to be careful and cautious about how we introduce this new concept, and that's why we're restricting it to village-owned property. We want to look at this, and quite frankly, we want to look at 193 Beekman, the UAW building, and as kind of a test project. And if we think it works, then we may continue to use this tool, assuming that we do adopt it. So the restriction is one that's kind of based on where we own property. And every other piece of property that we own is essentially parkland that we wouldn't want to do anything with other than maintain and improve as parkland. So it wasn't, we could change that. We would, and just open it up to the entire village, but it would still be restricted to the same geographic area because of where we own property.
So,
And, I mean, there is one other side, I should say, where we control property. So the
Is the
east parcel
by this, Ken?
is controlled by the village, but we cannot build commercial, any commercial properties on the east parcel.
Okay.
commercial or residential.
Yeah. Well, to me, yeah.
Yeah. So a draft of the language was prepared. It was submitted to the village board for their initial consideration. In September, the village board had a presentation by Professor John Nolan from Pace Land Use Law, who provided an overview of land use zoning and the floating zone concept and how it's been applied in other communities, and provided kind of the legal rationale and history behind the floating zone concept. And at that time, the village board had some comments on the initial draft, and so a revised version was prepared, resubmitted to the village board. The village board held a public hearing, but they also referred as requirement under the village code the proposed zoning text amendment to your board. So that's why the proposed zoning floating zone text is before you for review and recommendation.
Okay.
To the
So-
county.
It's been referred to the county and to other interested and involved agencies, New York State Department of State, New York State DEC. That's a requirement under seeker. So I could go through some of the specifics of the zoning text if you'd like. Continue.
Yes, please.
So we've identified as part of the floating zone concept, you need to have standards where you would identify these specific properties where the proposed zone may land. And it's, as Professor Nolan pointed out in his presentation, and I'll just reiterate, that the application of the floating zone to a particular piece of property is a purely discretionary action by the village board. So they could apply it to, as an example, 193 Beekman, and that may be it. They may have other applicants who may request it, but they don't necessarily have to entertain the application in every instance. There are specific bulk and dimensional standards for the strategic property redevelopment at SPR. The underlying zoning creates the applicable dimensionals and bulk requirements. There are opportunities in the proposed floating zone that would allow for, as an example, the relief from certain setback requirements. There may be incentives for increasing FAR and height. There is an opportunity as part of a special permit process to allow for non-residential uses to occur on the upper floors of mixed-use buildings. And there's also, because of the orientation of the proposed language as a TOD, transit-oriented development, being within 1/2 mile of a train station or being within 1,000 linear feet of a dedicated bus stop, where there may be relief that's granted for parking. And again, that would be part of a special permit process where an applicant would have to appeal to the village board for the issuance of that special permit. So there's a procedural process that an applicant would need to go before the village board in the event that they are requesting the special permit for development incentives. There is a series of incentives that may be that an applicant may provide to the village for increased FAR, for enhanced or relief from setbacks, relief from parking. And essentially, those are defined as the provision of affordable housing as defined by Westchester County, the provision of improvements to public parks within the inter-village neighborhood, or streetscape and landscape improvements, again, within the inter-village neighborhood. And again, I think the intent here is that as these properties become redeveloped and the development is incentivized, that those incentives or the improvements come to the benefit of within this particular neighborhood.
But at this stage, we're only talking about redevelopment of municipal properties, right? Not commercial, privately held properties.
That's correct.
Okay, so these, and whichever municipal agencies are gonna undertake these development, they're gonna have to meet all these requirements set out
Yes.
Yeah.
And on balance, the obligations that you have to meet in this outline here are not too weighty that it makes the incentive still worthwhile.
Yeah.
kind of
An applicant will have to make their case before the village board. Why should the village incentivize the development? And there would need to be a weighing and balancing of the improvements and the incentives that would occur to the village as a result of the development, the new development.
Okay, well, we'll need some time as the planning board to go through the document, and it was suggested that we have a work session amongst the planning board members to maybe draft up some comments back to the Board of Trustees, so.
And I think it's one thing that's important to note, your continuing role in this process. Everything else that's in the code stays the same. So that means that if we were considering granting a request like this, it has to come to the planning board. It has to go through a public hearing, and it has to come to the planning board as well.
Mm-hmm.
So you have an ongoing oversight and recommendation role
Right.
in the process.
Okay.
Okay.
Now, the village board has, they have a public hearing for January 7th and January 14th.
We've kept, the public hearing has
Being
been
open.
open for a couple of weeks now, and we've, at our last meeting, we adjourned. We don't have a meeting next week or the following week, and as we normally would, so we've kept it open to our next regular board meeting, which will be January 14th. And if we, as is our practice, if we feel we need more time, we'll keep the public hearing open longer.
So I think,
So we would look forward to your deliberate response to this.
Okay. Will
I
do.
think you're supposed to get back to us in 30 days or something like that, but it's us and it's you guys, and, you know, I think we can deal.
And you mentioned earlier that the UAW is one property you've identified that would meet the criteria for this program. Are there any other properties you have in mind?
Yes. Well, just right now, it's DPW and 193 Beekman. I'm trying not to call it the UAW building anymore, but because it hasn't been there for a while. The possibility, and I have to be careful how I say this so that everybody doesn't like lose it. So I'm going to use a firehouse as an example. And those are precious to many people in our community. So just for the record, we have no plans to close a firehouse. But assuming for a moment that we were going to sell this building, Village Hall, and we were going to move our fire companies that are here and our police department and all of our village functions to another building someplace else, a new building. We may at the same time look at it and say, well, we have a firehouse right around the corner on Lawrence. So maybe that might be part of the package since we're building a new firehouse anyway. So maybe it's a central one that includes the two firehouses, fire companies are not here. So those could potentially be properties that would be covered by this. And that's where some of the things that you know, you see in here start to make more sense, like setbacks and stuff. If you took down one of those buildings, I don't know how you could build something back on the lot because of the required setbacks.
Right.
You know, now they're like the buildings up and down Beekman Avenue, they're built wall to wall all the way down. So those are potential properties as well. But again, I just want to say we have no plans to close any firehouse. We have no plans to build a new firehouse either. So I'm just using an example to try to answer your question.
Thanks.
Did I make that really clear that we're not closing?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Okay. All right, great. Well,
Thank you. We look forward to the comments.
The next planning board meeting is January 16th.
correct.
So did you want to schedule time at, say, 7 o'clock? So that you have some additional time to
Yeah.
prepare comments?
I was actually thinking whether
Have a
it's
separate
possible
session?
to have a separate session, but I just have stuff going on every single night. Are people back January 2nd? No.
That's like a Thursday or Friday?
That's a Thursday, the first,
That's gonna be tough. That's in the back end of the.
yeah, New Year's Day,
Eve
right?
If you want, we can
Kristen.
send out a feeler to everybody.
Yeah, why don't we do
Yeah,
that?
just work it like the
'cause,
tree commission thing, where we're all just separately comment and somebody collates it.
Yeah, it might be helpful to have a little dialogue if possible.
Yeah, yeah.
So Pamela, if you wouldn't mind,
What are the dates you'd like me to
The week of the 6th.
I was good
right?
with the second.
I'm not available any night of the 6th. I don't necessarily have to be there. You all could meet without me. But I'm available for now, the 13th and 14th, which are not Thursday evenings.
do? 15th is zoning.
Right, 13th or 14th was,
Which is a Monday,
So you
Tuesday.
want to hold that at 7 o'clock?
that sounds good.
Work session
Monday,
on floating
13th,
zone.
7?
The 13th at 7 is fine for me. Does that work for you all?
It should, yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, so we just have to check with,
I'll send an email out for one the other at 7 o'clock, work session, floating zone.
okay, thank you. All right. I think we can move on to the approval of minutes now. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Peaceful, pleasant holiday to everybody as well.
Same to you.
The October 17th minutes, we couldn't approve last month because we didn't have a quorum, right?
Members that were present when missing.
Right. And I think we have the same,
I was told we you could approve them. Why? We have 5 and not present again.
yeah,
We're on October 17th.
we have the same, same predicament.
And whoever is here who was not at an earlier meeting may vote to approve the minutes, but there's no compulsion to do so.
Right.
So it's really just a matter of what the board's pleasure is.
I think in January, everybody should be back.
Yeah.
So we may as well postpone until we have the folks that were present at the meeting approve the minutes, is my feeling. There's no big rush, right? And I guess same for November 21st minutes. All right,
November, you're tabling the November 21st next week? Okay.
yeah. Okay. Can I get, I make a motion to adjourn the meeting? Can I get a
Seconded.
second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Meeting is closed.